Day 592 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzy here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 282,000 military personnel losses, which includes an additional 580 in the past 24 hours. Then as for hardware losses, so 21 tanks and 21 APVs, and a non-whoppingly below average 17 artillery. But hey, that tank count for today at 21 is pretty impressive. Then we'll head across to the map today, as in some rather odd news in Shvasia within the Russian Federation. A pack of wolves assaulted servicemen guarding an air defense installation. Now, one soldier suffered fatal injuries before medical assistance arrived. Another found refuge in the cockpit of a Buk air defense system where an officer was asleep at the time. But it's not every day that you hear news like that. Then, heading back to the Ukrainian map today, moving down to Nikolska, which is in fact really close to Mariupol, right there. As just before the weekend, yet another Russian Su-35 fighter jet was shot down, which makes for 2 in the past week alone. More incredibly, it wasn't even from Ukrainian fire, but instead from Russian friendly fire. This is starting to look more like a parody. And I cannot even count how many times this has happened. It's as if when your men have lost confidence in command and control and are terrified of death from above. And so much so that they'll just shoot at every shadow to survive. Now, Russian Telegram channels also mentioned this as they stated with some low morale that, quote, "At this rate of work of our valiant air defense, we will soon be left without aviation." So it all does really appear as if Russia's well-trained and professional forces within many elements of their army have long since been eliminated this year or last. Then, momentarily sliding all the way back north to the Luhansk Oblast, as near to the Makivka settlement. Preliminary reports have advised that Russian forces northeast of this Ukrainian-controlled settlement had to contend with some concerted Russian offensive operations where Russian forces managed to advance up to 1,000 meters in the Makivka direction, taking up new roads that lead to the settlement itself. And in fact, let's pull up the date map to show you exactly how that looks. So going back from yesterday and today, this region right there. And so I'd have to say that the northern Donbas is a strange beast of a location, which frequently involves counteroffensives from the one side, only to have a counteroffensive to take back the lands from the other side. And in fact, I've always felt that the northern Donbas should be one of the strongest locations for the Russian military, given its proximity to Russia itself. But events in this area have never really transpired in the way or favor of the Russian military, not really that much at all. Then we'll head across down to the southern front line today as Ukrainian defense forces have advanced north of in the direction of Kapani, this one. And I'll display it here on the date map as well, so going back a couple of days each and forward. So there it is. And it was just a week or two ago that I mentioned it was extremely likely that Russia couldn't hold its frontline positions here, just because of the very nature of the right angle frontline positional stance that those very Russian frontliners found themselves having to contend with there. Oh, and then just moving quite close, there's also been some word that really very next door at the Novoprokopivka settlement that the AFU has also advanced forward here, although not yet reflected on the map, and that the AFU managed to advance inside the settlement, grabbing a first foothold. Then also right next door as well, so There's also been a bit of news that concentrated Ukrainian artillery fire simultaneously hit Russian positions near to Verbova. Oh, and also that geolocated footage showed that the Ukrainian infantry, supported by armoured vehicles, was advancing south, clearing more trenches and tree lines along the main line of the Russian defence. So, all in all, in this region, it really seems that Ukrainian forces have indeed made some fair successes quite lately. Then, as for some notable moments in the south recently with this footage, and note nobody was around or hurt in the making of this video, as it puts on display a Russian minefield cook-off after taking some direct Ukrainian artillery fire. And at the end of the video, check out the mine placements in the aftermath, as this type of mine placement strategy or setup with 50 odd mines positioned right next to each other is a fairly non-standard military tactic, as it is very easy to clear multiple mines all in the one go. It's also easier to detect. I mean, this Russian setup is an extremely localized area of denial tactic that could have been implemented a lot better. Just largely ineffective instead. One would hope that they keep doing this. Then also in the south, no shortage of Ukrainian FPV loitering munitions, with this one flying into an abandoned BMP-2 infantry fighting vehicle, causing a catastrophic ammunition detonation, all as the Ukrainian FPV mop-up crew comes to town. Then we also saw Ukraine's Air Mobile Brigade, the Garuda unit, which is a specialized form of military brigade dedicated to carrying out air assaults, destroying Russian fortifications, fighting positions, and bases in the southern region too. Oh, they're not to be outdone. So also here, Ukraine's Shadow unit hit a Russian T-72B3 variant tank, so one of the more modern ones, with, of course, another FPV drone, with the standard cook-off to boot. Now, briefly, we'll head across to the Kherson Oblast, definitely just for a moment there, as in occupied Novakhovka, the car of the secretary of the local branch of United Russia was reportedly blown up. Now, according to the deputy, the secretary of the local party branch was hospitalized and in serious condition, but later reports appeared to confirm he sustained injuries, just simply incompatible with life. Then we'll move down more south on the map today, as explosions were reported in Jankoy and Yevpatoria, but also preliminary reports of air defense active in Krasnoperekopsk as well there. And of these events, it appears to have been as a result of carried out strikes by Ukraine using converted S-200 anti-aircraft missiles, which was in fact stated by the Defense Ministry anyway. Then, as for the map, I just want to very briefly move across to the very border edge of Romania, as there have been multiple video uploads now of Romanians filming Ukrainian air defense systems as they target Russian drones, and those drones of which still on an endless quest to strike grain infrastructure of Ukraine. Again, very little military value involved here as Russia looks to target these types of locations, but Russia has to look tough and back up its actions of choosing to leave the grain deal about a month or two ago. But it all is very quite militarily wasteful in terms of Russia continuing to use up all of its, let's call it a long-range strike capability. Then we'll head across to the Black Sea somewhat, as Russia signed an agreement with Georgia's Georgia's breakaway region to build a naval base. And the breakaway region of which is effectively a Russian military occupied region, location named Abkhazia. Now, all of which is an obvious move, or at least an attempt to obtain some additional security for some of Russia's Black Sea fleet. But I would very much expect Russia to be doing this in the cowardly hope for additional protection for their very at-risk naval fleet these days. Long story short, Russia may be choosing to later fire cruise missiles from this position, which will make it a legitimate military target from the perspective of the global stage. A global stage of which doesn't even recognize this breakaway province of sorts of Georgia and expects and believes it to naturally belong to Georgia. Then we'll head across to some news for today. We'll start out with some hardware updates once again. So Germany will provide another Patriot air defense system to Ukraine. Just days ago, Germany announced an additional IRIS-T air defense system and a dozen more Gepards, which are very useful against the Shahed drones that Russia fires into Ukraine. And so news of this caliber is becoming more and more frequent every week now, sometimes every day, as Ukraine heads into winter and needs additional protection for their home needs, and very, very likely due to waves of Russian missile and drone attacks on Ukrainian energy infrastructure. And I'll also pop in there, no, I don't have a crystal ball, but it's quite obvious that Russia and Putin have decided to once again implement this very dick move of a plan for wintertime. Then we'll move across to some Russian hardware, and this time, this version of this segment could be considered quite legitimate for Russia. So Russia's Rostec military weapons manufacturer has recently been known to have produced new 120mm Flocks self-propelled mortar guns, albeit they've only been produced in very limited volumes. And now out of those, one of these Russia is already down one for, as we recently came across some footage of an effective Ukrainian FPV drone taking its part and destroying one in the process. Then moving across to some economy news. So the ruble is back, or at least back to below 1 US cent per 1 ruble. Technically downgraded to 0.99 of a cent, in fact, now. And this comes after Russia recently attempted to control inflationary pressure or issues with the ruble by upping their reserve or their central bank interest rate from 12% to 13%. And this is all very problematic for Russia, who needs to import goods for their war, which is expensive enough with the depreciating value of the ruble, as you can very much see here. But add to that, when Russia performs sanction evading maneuvers, such as purchasing equipment no longer directly from the supplier on the international stage, but instead indirectly through other countries. I'm thinking Belarus and other countries like that. There's just inherently additional costs and steps involved, making equipment they purchase even more expensive. That is, if they can purchase it at all. And the situation is not expected to get any better for Russia on this front anytime soon. Then heading across to some other news, just briefly, at the Granada summit in Spain, near to the end of last week, Zelensky met European leaders, securing defense aid and support. Spain pledged 6 Hawk launchers after Zelensky's talks with PM Sanchez. The UK offered 600 million, this is in US dollars, for winter aid. Slovakia and Armenia expressed continued support for Ukraine, and Zelensky thanked the nations, highlighting the thanks for the enhanced defense and artillery support before winter. Then in some other interesting news, a resident of the Tver region in Russia is being tried on several political articles. The prosecutor demanded 12 years in prison for this such individual, and the last words of this Russian political prisoner, named Sergei Trofimov, can be seen there on the screen as he proclaims Ukraine being a victim of Russian aggression. Respect. Then moving across to a couple of funnies to round it all off for today, guys. So I don't actually know how accurate this one is, but people online have been stating that when they pop in the words Russian military into an AI image generating prompt, they're sometimes getting an output displaying Russian military personnel pretty much stealing washing machines and toilets, or things of that nature, but also from Ukrainian babushkas as well. Now, if this is indeed true, it means part of the AI datasets would include some publicly available images from the recent past showing some Russians actually performing this sort of task or action. So it is indeed possible. But also quite embarrassing too for your military members to be paired up with white goods in this way. Then in a final quick funny to round it all off for today, guys. So last week at one of Putin's annual Valday retreat speeches in Russia, he said Russia aims to build a new world. But I don't know. Oh no. Never go full Hitler. It's just not a good look. Unless, of course, Putin's a secret double agent and means to build a new world by sacrificing every available Russian in Ukraine. But really, who knows what goes on in his head. But hey, that's our Putin. Okay, so thanks again for watching, guys. That'll be it for today. And do note, I have intentionally left this channel distinctly separate from some obvious events occurring in the Middle East right now. That is with Israel in a state of full-blown war. And I've done so to keep this channel a dedicated platform for Ukraine, which it truly deserves. However, if you do enjoy my reporting style, then there's a link in the comments section below to my other channel on that mentioned topic. Although do be advised that the format on that channel is a little bit different, with no overtly constructed funnies, at least certainly not at the current juncture. But hey, if you've enjoyed learning a thing or two over time on this channel, chances are you might have the same experience on that channel as well. So thanks again for watching, guys. Please continue to like, comment, and I do hope to see all of you guys here in the next one. Cheers.